All right, so this is my completely not sponsored, honest opinion about the 360 cameras I've been using. I'm going to go through 3 cameras in this video just to give my overall perspective on using them for specifically POV mountain biking. Basically, it's either going to be on my chest or on a chin mount to capture POV mountain biking. So right off the bat, we got the V4, which is the brand new Insta360 one that I've got my hands on. And I've got the V3 as well. And the good old reliable 6-year-old GoPro Max, which shouldn't be even competitive with these, but very much is. It's a great little camera. So I'm going to be going through all 3 of those, talking about them. Generally, right off the bat, where I see 360 cameras going is I think Insta360 is taking the route of trying to appeal to as many people as possible, and as many people as possible isn't going to include just mountain bikers and action sports people. So they're looking to create the best camera possible, the best sensor, the best battery life, the best lenses, all these things, which is awesome in its own right. But I think because they're going that way, they're taking away from what I need to go, or what I need a 360 camera to be, and what that is a POV camera. Doesn't matter how great it is, but if it gets too big, too clunky, too awkward, too weird looking, I'm not going to want to film with it. I do this for YouTube, and for clients, so sometimes the quality does outweigh the negatives, and we'll go over that in this video. But generally, what I find is that Insta360 is just, they're going to that selfie stick. They want people to have that selfie stick with their kids on vacations, at cool locations, kind of the selfie stick typical person, I think, is their biggest target audience. It's the way it feels anyways from the cameras they're producing. They're long and they're heavy. And even though the quality of pictures there, they can be very awkward. And we'll get into it with the V4. I think it's very awkward trying to mount that as a POV camera for mountain biking. Where GoPro, I think, has a huge opportunity, in my mind, to release a GoPro Max 2 in the next year or 2, hopefully, to produce a camera that's a similar form factor to this. This is still one of the smallest 360 cameras you can get, but boost up the quality, and for me personally, boost up the quality in low or harsher light, like when you're mountain biking through trees when it's a nice bright sunny day, or even when it's a cloudy day like here on the island. Having that low light performance would just be spectacular. I don't need any more frame rates. I film generally at 24 or 30 frames per second, depending on the project. I rarely go over that, especially with the POV stuff. That's it. Like, I rarely use 120 or 60 frames per second in this version. So yeah, so right off the bat, size and weight of these things. Like I mentioned before, the size and the weight of the GoPro Max is absolutely ideal. It feels light, it's got a nice grippy texture. It's got square edges, which means I can place it down on tables and not worry about the lens getting hit, or when I'm out in the field, I can put it down on a rock. And I know if it's a flat spot on the rock, it'll stay there. These cameras don't have a flat side to rest this on, so you always have to have something covering the lens, which is kind of annoying. V4, I will tell you, is absolutely the best camera quality I've ever had in a 360 camera. Hands down. It has the longest battery, has the best field of view, has the best low light performance, and just looks spectacular. Like, I'm very, very impressed with the software on this thing. The frustrating part about it is mounting this V4, which is heavier than the V3, which I already thought was too big and too long. It's significantly heavier. Like if you look at the grams, it's only a few dozen more grams or whatever, hardly noticeable. But when you have it on your helmet or your chest, you notice it. So as a POV camera, this is absolutely real tricky to use. And they do have a side mount that you can kind of put on and use. This helps for sure, especially with like the weight distribution. Instead of having this long thing off your chin mount or your chest, this thing kind of compacts it a bit so that it's not so far away from you that it's causing that cantilevered effect. And then the GoPro Max doesn't need it. It doesn't need it. It's got the built-in mounting brackets, which is incredible, and it's just a really great design. It's lightweight, you hardly notice it. Significantly less weight than both the V3 and the V4, but really great camera. So taking them out in the field, the weight's one thing. I could get over that for sure. It's grams. We're not talking about a kilo extra weight you're carrying up there, so I get away with that with this. But when you're mountain biking, especially in the summer, it can be some hot days. And this V4, given all of its horsepower, I assume, it's got all these like ridges on it to help dissipate the heat and stuff like that. But this is the first camera I have ever got that comes with a little heat sleeve. So in the box, it'll never include any accessories you might actually need, but it includes a heat sleeve. In this heat sleeve, you put it over top of it because this thing can get so hot. It can record at 8K, I think 30 frames per second. And if you're recording at that, or even the 5.7K like I normally do, because it's better in low light, it gets hot. Really hot, like hot to the touch, and that can be really annoying. You don't want to be having a heat sleeve on this thing, little parka jacket on it out there too, adding to the heat. So it might keep your hands comfortable, but it's going to warm up the camera even more. So that was kind of disappointing, just how hot this thing gets. I have tried it like here in my studio, and it does not get as hot as quickly. Obviously, it's like 20 degrees in here. When you get it out in the field, when it's like 27, 28 and the sun's on it a little bit, it gets hot. It gets really hot. And I've never had that issue with the GoPro Max. It always seems to stay pretty cool. Never had any issues with that. And even the V3 is quite a bit better than that. So for heat, that's just a crazy thing I've never seen in a box, is the heat shield. And it looks like that. It's like a little piece of plastic, a little thermal shield or whatever it is on it, but it looks like a little cell phone case that goes around it. The ease of use, big thing that the Insta360s have is tiny buttons that you can hardly feel that are way too close to the touch screen. So if you have it on, and even if you know where the button is, you're gonna like reach out to it and you're gonna try to find it. You can barely feel that little circle. And if your finger just goes up a little bit and just hops onto that screen, you could completely change what mode it's in. So you go from video to time lapse to single lens to whatever. It's really easy to do that. And if you're in a rush, you're just going to make mistakes. And it's really hard to feel it. You have to kind of feel the bottom and like, okay, and then pull up, and there it is. And it works. That's annoying. GoPro's got it right. They have one button on the top, so as long as you're reaching for the top, you find that button, that's record. Very easy. Their power button is on the side. You can't mix it up. Kudos to GoPro for that. So easy use that way is amazing. The voice recognition of saying GoPro start recording, almost always flawless. This is very good. Insta360 feels like it's asleep. And then you say the command of start recording, it almost just wakes up, and then you have to say start recording, and it doesn't catch it as easy, and it's annoying because I usually have it mounted on like my full face mask right at the chin, so it's not like it's not getting a clear speech to it. But that's really annoying with the Insta360. where the GoPro has been great for that, and they need to keep that going. it's it's way better. I find even when I'm skiing or mountain biking, I can whisper at the GoPro and not look like a fool, saying, GoPro, start recording. GoPro, stop recording. And it picks it up. And you loud beeps, you can hear it. It's very obvious. For the mounting options when you're out in the field, on the Insta360s, they don't have the built-in mounts for the action camera mounts, which are basically the GoPro mounts. So you have to put on this little dongle, which makes it even longer, and I can tell you it just feels so heavy and it looks so awkward. And this thing's so long, I'm worried about it hitting my actual handlebars, and that's crazy. To move it over to one of these, where you have to take apart the bottom piece, find a place to put it, usually in a bum bag or something. This has to go on a certain way, otherwise you're covering up buttons. Threads on pretty good. It's a nice aluminum feel. It's a good thing. And then this is a little better, but like I said, when you have it in 360 mode, as this is mounted, you can see little black pieces back here. It doesn't make those invisible, which is super annoying. And it also offsets the camera. So the GoPro, when you have it mounted straight on the camera, will be dead center of where you are. And since this is so long, the V4, the lens is noticeably in editing off to the side. So it's not straight on, it's off to the side. You can notice that. You can also notice when you edit the 360 footage and you reframe it, part of your helmet now is in it. It's just you don't have the same play that you do normally. The only fix I've had that kind of works pretty well, I did it on the last shoot there, is I had to get a couple pieces to kind of angle it so that it was still on this mount, horizontal mount, but I made it vertical and I kind of tilted the camera forward. That got the weight close enough to my face that it was manageable, and it also gave me enough clear sight that it was manageable. It is still offset by about an inch, and I notice it, but a lot of people wouldn't, so you could manage it that way. And to be honest, this camera is so good quality-wise. If I really needed high quality footage, or if it was a really tough shoot in like really dark or harsh conditions with a client or an athlete, or just myself for a really cool trail, I would probably go with this camera just for that. But it is a little more of a pain in the ass to get right. So that's my thoughts on the mounting process for this guy. GoPro, I love. GoPro Max version 2, like just make it better in low light at 24 frames per second or 30 frames per second. And I'm super happy. Bump up the resolution if you can, but if you have to sacrifice resolution for low light quality like Sony likes to sometimes, go for that. That's what I need. Do it for me. That's it. Another thing with the Insta360s is they have a fantastic app. Their app is very good. You can use it. It's very intuitive. You can reframe. Looking at shots right after is very, very good. But one thing that is very frustrating, especially if you just take it out of the case and you get out there and you're excited to use it, you need to have the app to use the camera. It's just crazy. So I was fortunate, and I'm always fortunate because Cumberland has cell reception. So I was able to download the initial app and it was all good. It seems like every couple weeks they come out with a firmware update to it, which makes the app run great. But again, to look at things or use the app or like even use the camera, you need to have the app at its most current firmware setting. So before you go out, you have to check that. Where the GoPro, you don't. It's just kind of a standalone, which is what it should be. I feel like this is just taking too much of my information and forcing me to get this app and firmware updates all the time. And that was kind of annoying when I was out there because I was ready to do a trail and all of a sudden looked at my phone and it's like, oh, you need to update the firmware to use the camera. So I was like, okay. I guess with the big size of the V4, the battery life is insane, even though it gets so hot. You are recording at 8K, so they need a bigger battery. It charges faster, I guess, too. But I've just never had issues with any of the 360 cameras. Even the GoPro Max, if I'm using it a lot, like a big morning or a full day of shooting, then I just bring extra batteries. It's not that big a deal just to dry it off and pop out a battery and pop in a new one. It's quite easy. I guess if you're scuba diving, it would kind of be nice to have a battery that could go the whole day, but as far as battery life, they're all pretty great. So in my business, I work with athletes, I work with organizations that work with athletes, and if I had to give them a GoPro or an Insta360 to use, and then I edit the footage later, which is common because I can't keep up with pro athletes somehow. Not without an e-bike, which hopefully is coming soon. the the GoPro is the one I would give them. It's so simple to use, point and shoot. You don't need to have the app on you. Um, it's been so bulletproof that this is the one I would give them. It's very, very simple. One button, press, go. The auto is pretty good. Um, it's just what I would give to them to make sure I get a good shot. Now, if I'm on site and it's rough conditions, like it's really bright and sunny and treed, so you're going from harsh light to shadows, or even just staying in deep shadows, I would probably put this one on them. That's the V4, and it's because of that picture quality is absolutely insane, and it is worth it in that way to me. As much as I complain about all the headaches about it, I found a way that makes it decent, and that's what I'm going to go with. All right, so editing and post-production with these three cameras, the V4, V3 from Insta360, and the Max from GoPro. Let's talk about it. So the size of files, the GoPro Max films in kind of a 5.6K. Once you crop that down, it's kind of a 1080p, maybe a little more resolution. But they have this magic wizardry. I don't know how they do it, but in their software, you can upscale to 4K ProRes, which isn't going to be true 4K ProRes because you're upscaling, but the footage turns out really good and it keeps the file sizes reasonable. When you're filming on something like the V4, even in 5.7K, especially in 8K, it films at such high detail that the file sizes are massive. And I have good computers and lots of storage. And I think for the average person, it's just getting to be a point where it's like this stuff is just so big. And the problem with people that are learning to use 360 cameras or not fully into it is that they film too much. They feel like everything needs to be filmed. They're not being specific or well thought out about which sections they want to film. So they're filming the climb, they're filming the water break, they're filming like a bridge somewhere, or they walk down and they film a creek because they're like that might be cool B-roll, and then they film getting the helmet on, and then they film going down all the runs. You get it, right? They film way too much. So if you're going to do that and have this camera, you're going to come home and upload gigabytes and gigabytes of material, like dozens and dozens of gigabytes. You could definitely get up to 100 gigabytes in a day if you're over filming with this guy, and the battery life will let you. It's crazy. So again, like for most clients that are going to film too much, when I give them a GoPro to use on their own shoots, it's like the GoPro's it. Like it's going to be so much smaller file sizes and things like that. And the workflow after is just going to be faster because of that. The software experience. So using the Insta360's desktop app or the GoPro Player app, both are quite good. Once you get used to it, they're both fine. POV stuff's pretty simple. You just want a nice field of view. But the big thing with POV stuff is you want to have a directional lock so that it can be kind of like a GoPro where you're not trying to like reframe and put keyframes in all the time. You want to have it so you can lock and say, okay, I want this direction. I don't want to see the body. I don't want to see anything else. I want it to turn as if I just had like a regular GoPro or Insta360 Ace or whatever they use. I think it's an Ace. Ace Sounds right. And the GoPro app is very good for it. They call it the World Lock. You got to turn that on. You can use horizon leveling if there's a clear horizon, but generally I don't. I want the twists in the body too. The stabilization's so good, I just keep it that. So the World Lock on the GoPro follows the run, and that makes editing the 360 so much easier. I can set it up, get the right frame right at the beginning of the video, put on World Lock, and skim through just to be 100% sure, but it's rare I have to go through and put a keyframe in to readjust where the GoPro is framed. The 360 has a directional lock button in their app, and it's okay. It's not great. It's kind of hit or miss. You got to get it early, and I find I'm always putting in keyframes. Now, I edit for a living, and it's not that crazy for me to put in some keyframes, but it's still annoying because what I'll do is I'll have 6-7 runs in a day that I want to turn into high quality POV shots that I can then, and I can color grade them, and then I can put them into shots as a ProRes video file. I find when you're doing 7 or 8 shots, it just gets really annoying to have to do that. And that's where, especially when you're wearing like the horizontal mount and like this piece, this black piece is still showing in the footage, I'm constantly trying to, having to readjust it so that it's not doing this, but I'm still getting the most field of view. I could punch in and it wouldn't be a problem, but then I might as well use just a regular POV hero style camera. Insta360, if you're watching this, make your software better. The directional lock should be a complete lock. Or you should be able to adjust the sensitivity, because I do get why you don't want it. Some people don't want it super locked on because you want to have smooth transitions. But for POV stuff, action camera world, get it to lock and have good stabilization. And you do already have great stabilization. Just make that direction lock legitimately a direction lock. So that's my big beef with Insta360, is it's more time for me editing, and it's already a big file, and I just don't, I have to spend so much more time editing 360 footage. That being said, again, this gives me the best footage. This gives me the very, very best quality video. I'm going to this if I have to have the most professional quality video I need. And I will put that effort into keyframes and the bigger files, no problem. But for the average consumer, for the average person trying to capture their rides, this is a beast. This is a lot.